Hello and welcome back to the Movie Memo Recaps. Today we are going to recap a 1993 movie titled In the Line of Fire. Please be advised that there will be spoilers ahead. The film begins with a young CIA agent named Al, who is picking up his new mentor, Frank Horrigan. They have an important appointment that morning with a notorious counterfeiting syndicate. Upon arriving at the designated location, the syndicate invites Al aboard a boat while Frank initiates the transaction. Unbeknownst to Al, the syndicate leader has already conducted a background check and discovered Al's undercover role. Frank, having previously infiltrated the group, remains undetected by the criminals. To test Frank's loyalty, they issue a chilling order for him to kill his partner. Frank reluctantly takes the gun and prepares to follow through, only to find the weapon is empty.
Yes, Frank.
The syndicate had planned this betrayal from the outset, aiming to eliminate Al. In a moment of peril for Al, Frank quickly springs into action. He fires shots and creates a diversion, seizing the opportunity to pull Al to safety. This act demonstrates Frank's unwavering commitment to protect his fellow agent, even at great personal risk. Although they narrowly escape the immediate threat, Al is left shaken and bewildered, struggling to reconcile the fact that Frank seemed willing to shoot him. Frank reassures him that he knew the gun was unloaded due to its weight. Yet, this revelation prompts Al to question his decision to join the CIA. Later that night, as they work on reports, Frank advises Al to go home and collect himself. Meanwhile, a boarding house owner reports a disturbing discovery to the police. Days prior, a tenant nearly caused a fire by leaving an oven on. Upon entering the room with a spare key, the owner finds walls plastered with photos of the President of the United States, all marked with target-like scribbles. The case is swiftly handed over to the CIA. The tenant, identified as Crawley, appears to be plotting a threat against the president, but investigators need more evidence to proceed. Frank investigates Crawley's apartment while the suspect watches from a distance. A database search reveals that Crawley has been using a false identity, prompting Frank to take the potential threat seriously. When Frank and his team return to the apartment, they find it deserted, save for an old photograph of Frank from his days as a presidential bodyguard. This unsettling discovery indicates that Crawley is aware of Frank's identity and home address. That night, Frank receives an enigmatic phone call from a man named Booth, who ominously warns that the president will soon be in his crosshairs. Booth expresses a disturbing fascination with Frank, particularly upon learning that he once protected two presidents. This raises alarming questions about how Booth could have so quickly uncovered details about a special agent's background. As their conversation unfolds, sirens blare in the distance. Frank realizes that Booth is calling from just across the street. The CIA attempts to track down Booth but encounters challenges. Former tenants provide inconsistent descriptions of him, as if he changes his appearance daily. To safeguard the president, Frank reports the threat to his old friend Sam, the White House chief of staff. Frank's sudden presence creates tension among those who have previously clashed with him. Ignoring their discomfort, he requests to return as a presidential bodyguard. Sam hesitates, concerned that Frank may be too old for field duty, but ultimately respects their shared history and grants his request. Despite struggling to keep pace while running alongside the president's car, Frank remains steadfast in his duty. Meanwhile, Booth observes from a distance, satisfied to see Frank drawn deeper into his dangerous game. During the day, Booth orchestrates a sinister ruse, sending medical personnel to stage a heart attack for Frank. That evening, Frank stops by a bookstore to purchase a magazine he noticed earlier in Booth's apartment, one showcasing innovative car designs that might hold vital clues. Shortly after, Booth calls again, but this time Frank is prepared. He has installed a wiretap to trace the call's origin. As their conversation unfolds, the CIA team works diligently to pinpoint Booth's location. Booth taunts Frank by reminding him of his failure to protect President John F. Kennedy 3 decades ago. Frank had been the agent sprinting alongside the president's car during that tragic assassination, an event that irrevocably tarnished his reputation. Colleagues turned away from him, and his marriage crumbled under the weight of that loss. Though the reminder stings, Frank maintains his composure, keeping Booth engaged long enough for the team to trace the call. However, when the conversation ends, their attempt to capture Booth fails. He has expertly concealed his network. Once again, Frank is left feeling powerless while Booth remains at large. The CIA vows to employ more advanced tools for their next attempt, as Booth's threat looms larger. They recommend scaling back the president's public appearances, but this warning falls on deaf ears. With the election approaching, campaign events are deemed essential for garnering crowds. Frank must stay vigilant at every rally. Meanwhile, Booth travels to Los Angeles, where he opens a bank account under a fictitious company name, an integral part of his nefarious plan. A bank employee named Pam grows suspicious and probes into his background. To allay her concerns, Booth invites Pam to dinner, and his calm demeanor successfully lowers her guard. Later, when he visits her home and discovers Pam with a friend, realizing his cover is blown, he ruthlessly eliminates them both. Back in Washington, Frank begins to develop feelings for Lily, the president's secretary. Despite being older and a widower, he approaches her with gentle persistence. Initially resistant due to an existing partner, Lily gradually begins to trust Frank, and their relationship deepens. The next day, Booth calls again, with Frank's colleagues listening in as some analyze Booth's psychological state while others work to trace the call. This time, Booth aims to unsettle Frank by forcing him to relive painful memories. The team nearly succeeds in locating the call, tracing it to a public phone across from the White House. Agents rush to the scene but fail to apprehend Booth. Who has disguised himself as a homeless man. Sensing something amiss about one of the homeless individuals nearby, Frank gives chase. In a narrow escape, Booth nearly gets struck by a passing car but manages to flee. The team collects fingerprints from the area where he stumbled and sends them to the FBI for analysis. To their astonishment, the FBI reports no match, concealing the fact that the identity is classified. Meanwhile, Booth hones his skills with a custom weapon, assembling it blindfolded to test his speed and precision. He also attends campaign events across several cities, meticulously studying patterns and identifying vulnerabilities in the president's security. The bank account Booth opened in Los Angeles serves as a financial lifeline for the president's campaign. Posing as a wealthy businessman allows him to infiltrate political circles with ease. As election day approaches, the president's schedule fills with rallies in numerous cities. Frank, already weary and feeling the toll of age, struggles to keep pace during the relentless rainy season. He takes medication to maintain his stamina, but despite Lily's insistence that he rest, he refuses, haunted by the fear that Booth could strike at any moment. One afternoon, heavy rain forces a campaign rally indoors, where Frank and his team stand guard on the crowded stage while reporters swarm the room. Battling a high fever, Frank fights to stay alert, his resolve wavering. Suddenly, a small explosion erupts, triggering an instinctive reaction. He fears it's an attack. It turns out to be nothing more than a balloon popping, a prank orchestrated by Booth, who has been lurking in the shadows all along. The commotion ignites panic among the crowd, throwing the rally into disarray. In the aftermath, the White House shifts blame onto Frank for the chaos and removes him from his security detail. Lily is deeply concerned, recognizing that he was merely fulfilling his duty while the real threat remains unaddressed. Despite being stripped of his responsibilities, Frank persuades Sam to allow him to maintain oversight of the case. That night, seeking solace, Frank plays the piano at his favorite bar, attempting to unwind from the day's turmoil. Unbeknownst to him, Booth watches from the shadows once again. Later, they speak on the phone. Booth admits to being the one who popped the balloon at the rally. When Frank presses him about why he has targeted the president, Booth offers no clear explanation. Close to midnight, there's a knock at Frank's apartment door. Initially suspecting a trap, he opens it to find his partner Al standing there with urgent news. Together, they review the car design magazine discovered in Booth's apartment and track down an expert who once interacted with Booth. The expert recalls a heated discussion about government issues but can't remember Booth's real name, only that he mentioned Phoenix. In Phoenix, they locate a contact named Walter Wickland, who has met Booth and provides crucial information. This leads them to uncover Booth's true identity, Mitch Leary. Frank and Al quickly trace an address linked to him and move in. Although the house appears empty, they enter through a window to search for evidence. Suddenly, an armed man surprises them, but Frank skillfully disarms him. Drop it! Moments later, another man enters and identifies himself as a CIA agent. He explains that Leary is not just a fugitive but a former CIA special operative trained for high-risk assassinations. His fingerprints are classified due to a career-ending incident in which he broke protocol and killed his own partner. Meanwhile, Leary tests his homemade weapon, a bizarre combination of wood and plastic, drawing the attention of two passing hunters. When they inquire about it, Leary calmly states that the weapon is intended for his plot against the president. Initially dismissing him as joking, their disbelief turns to horror when he demonstrates its lethal capability, ensuring they will never return. Later that evening, Al confides in Frank that he plans to resign from the CIA. He admits that recent events haunt him and fears leaving his young child without a father. Frank empathizes but urges him to stay until they capture Leary, aware that their mission will be significantly harder without Al's support. The following morning brings another call from Leary, with everyone in the office listening intently. This time, they are armed with knowledge of Leary's true identity. Frank confronts him directly, bringing up his dark past. Leary's response sends shockwaves through the team, an admission that shocks them all. Leary expresses that he never intended to kill his partner, rather, he claims that the CIA had ordered his partner to eliminate him once they deemed him obsolete.
They sent my best friend to my home to kill me. I never lied to you.
Talking about me.
Do you have any idea what I've done?
He feels a deep sense of betrayal and holds the president responsible for the demise of his career. In a moment of shared understanding, Leary tells Frank that they are bound by a similar fate, both once loyal servants to their country, only to be discarded when no longer useful. He refers to Frank as a friend, explaining that this is why he has refrained from harming him thus far. However, he warns that if Frank continues to pursue him, he too will become a target. This lengthy call provides the CIA with enough time to trace Leary's location, prompting Frank and Al to rush to the scene. On their way, they spot Leary attempting to flee, igniting a tense rooftop chase. Despite his age, Frank manages to keep pace, while Al falls behind after misjudging a ladder. In a daring leap to the next building, Frank nearly loses his footing but is briefly steadied by Leary, who seizes the opportunity to escape. Al catches up, waiting for a clear shot but hesitating to fire in order to protect Frank. In a sudden twist, Leary swings Frank toward the ladder to prevent him from falling, but in that critical moment, Al moves forward. Leary reacts with lightning speed, incapacitating Al before Frank's horrified eyes. Al dies instantly, leaving Frank in shock and grief. Later, police search Leary's hideout but find only a scrap of paper containing an unbreakable code. Still reeling from Al's death, Frank receives another call from Leary. This time, Leary attempts to undermine Frank's determination, asserting that he will never stop him unless he is willing to make the ultimate sacrifice, just as Leary plans to sacrifice himself to assassinate the president. With the code unsolved, Frank and Sam rush to the White House, urging officials to cancel the president's campaign stop in California, convinced that this is where the assassination will occur. Their warning is dismissed. The president views the state as vital for securing votes. Undeterred, Frank persuades Lily to allow him to join the trip despite the refusal. As security teams sweep the venue, Leary changes his disguise once again. 2 days before the event, Frank visits the hotel where the president will dine with party volunteers, questioning anyone who seems suspicious. Despite his efforts, Leary manages to infiltrate the event, having secured a place on the guest list, thanks to a substantial donation that grants him a seat directly across from the president. Frank shares a photo of Leary with hotel staff, but his disguise proves too effective for anyone to recognize him. Simultaneously, the White House receives complaints about Frank's behavior toward hotel employees, backed by security footage. As a consequence, he is removed from duty for the upcoming event, leaving him feeling powerless as the threat looms ever closer. Lily feels a deep sense of unease but finds herself unable to reverse her decision. The following morning, an agent drives Frank to the airport, handing him a contact number to call upon his arrival. The agent's peculiar way of reciting the number ignites a spark of inspiration in Frank, leading him to decipher the code discovered in Leary's apartment. The seemingly random string of letters reveals itself to be a series of numbers linked to a bank. Determined, Frank visits the bank and questions the staff, uncovering that an employee who once managed a significant client met a suspicious end. This revelation raises Frank's suspicions of a connection to Leary, prompting him to request the names of clients that the deceased employee had serviced. Meanwhile, Leary meticulously prepares for the evening event, cleverly concealing components of his homemade weapon within his clothing and disguising the bullet inside a keychain, enabling him to pass through security undetected. As the president arrives to raucous cheers from his supporters, Leary calmly assembles his weapon beneath the table, a skill honed through countless hours of practice, even blindfolded. Frank, piecing together clues from the list of bank accounts previously managed by the murdered employee, uncovers Leary's hidden identity. He races against time to reach the venue, knowing that the president is moments away from greeting Leary in acknowledgement of his generous donation. In a heart-stopping 10 seconds, Frank reaches Leary's table just in time to block the shot, taking the bullet himself. Security swiftly evacuates the president to safety. In the aftermath of his failed attempt, Leary seizes Frank as a human shield and retreats to an upper floor, surrounded by law enforcement. The impact is absorbed by Frank's vest, leaving him with only minor injuries. As Leary attempts to guide the snipers, damaged lights near the elevator create obstacles for a clean shot. Realizing his plan has unraveled, Leary concludes that life has lost its meaning and threatens to kill Frank first. In a moment of desperation, Frank quietly sends a coded message through his radio to reveal Leary's position. The first sniper shot misses its mark, creating an unexpected opening for Frank to fight back. In a poignant final moment, he extends his hand, offering salvation to Leary, but Leary chooses instead to end his own life. With the crisis finally resolved, Frank is hailed as a hero for saving the president. Reporters swarm him, and White House officials attempt to project friendliness, but Frank rebuffs their overtures and decides to retire from the CIA. In the aftermath, Frank and Lily grow closer, yet just as they plan to spend time together, Frank receives a final note from Leary, a farewell that leaves him pondering whether the battle is truly over or merely part of Leary's final gambit. Thank you for watching. If you are new, don't forget to subscribe for more recaps. Until next time, have a nice day.